Oh my God, things change so quickly around here. It's Orange and Blue today, presented by Sean Ponda and Mace. Cecil, Lammey, Andrew Mason. We thought Justin Simmons would be back, and then I go out to practice today. You're in Chicago, and Justin Simmons is on the side field. The injury report is out now. Simmons is questionable, and if you practice 2 days limited and then your Friday DNP, that's not a good sign.
Historically, it hasn't been, right? Unless you're talking about another guy who did practice the last couple of days, but was limited and left during stretching. And that, of course, was Lloyd Cushenberry leaving. But according to Sean Payton, that's an illness. He should be good to go. But when you are trying to battle back from an injury and you take the steps back, being limited the last 2 days, and then DMP, I mean, you can hope for the best. And I imagine the Broncos are going to take this thing, if possible, right up until 90 minutes before kickoff in Chicago on Sunday. But this makes you nervous, especially after what we saw from the defense last Sunday.
Yeah.
Very nervous.
And the secondary into Larry Turner-Yell, which we had talked to with Kareem Jackson about, said he felt good about it. You may need him out there. And Justin Simmons, he's going to push to play. You heard it in his interview where he's like, I felt embarrassed, and I wasn't even on the field. So it's like weighing how much do you let him play and then kind of protect him from himself.
Yeah, that's the key phrase, right? Protect the player from himself. By and large, most players are going to push to play. And it's up to those around him to say, no, let's wait. That's actually kind of what happened with Jerry Jeudy in week 1. That went right up to the buzzer, as it turned out. I mean, I got there to the stadium early, watched Jerry go through his workout. And Sean Payton was there, and George Payton was there. Both of them watching closely. And then they confer. You've got the medical personnel involved with it, and the decision was made to hold him back. So that's what it may end up looking like at Soldier Field on Sunday morning. Justin going through his paces to see, but not a good sign at all for the Broncos. And I mean, actually, if you start going down the list, because we're going to get to a player who was ruled out, and that, of course, is Josey Jewell. No surprise,
right?
But you start looking and saying, okay, this is a team without its. It could be without its number 1 safety again. Without its number 3 safety in Caden Stearns, its number 4 safety in PJ Locke, without its nickelback in K'Wan Williams. He's eligible to return next week. I don't think that's going to be the case. I think it's going to be a little while longer. PJ Locke could be back next week, which what we're talking about at safety could be really helpful in terms of getting that back. But you still don't have Baron Browning, who is eligible to return next week. You don't have Frank Clark. He's out for at least another week, and maybe we're looking more at Kansas City on October the 12th being the return date for Frank Clark. And then, of course, you got Josey Jewell, who ruled out with a groin injury or hip injury, pardon me. And that means Drew Sanders is making his second career start, and first one didn't go too well.
Yeah. And now you're facing Justin Fields, and Justin Fields' season hasn't gone too well. Speaking of things that didn't go too well, but they still got Cole Kmet, who's a big body tight end. You know his game well. He can box out guys. He's not going to get open against Sanders with Sanders' speed, but he could fool him with some guile. He could fool him and get open in a soft spot and be that security blanket for for Fields as he's targeting that young linebacker. And there are a few players out there. If you're Damari Mathis, get ready for work. If you are Larry Turner-Yell, get ready for work. If you're Drew Sanders, get ready for lots of Cole Kmet.
Yeah, it's not. And the thing is, the challenge isn't just Cole Kmet. It's also making sure you stay home and are on guard for Justin Fields taking off. And that's where it kind of gets interesting. It was preseason, but we saw elements of a dynamic Chicago offense when we watched that unit out there. I mean, they were moving the ball consistently. You and I were having the discussion about, has Justin Fields figured things out? I mean, watching him out there, he looked kind of like a point guard almost, focused on distributing rather than trying to create. Okay, I've got DJ Moore. I've got Khalil Herbert. I've got Roschon Johnson. I've got Cole Kmet. You just go on down the list of these playmakers. I just get them the ball and let them do their thing. right? I mean, you look around at the Bears offense, the skill position players, and you know this being Mr. Fantasy Football around here. The Bears have some talent and talent that can be highly productive, which is why you had some of their players going high in some fantasy drafts leading up to the season. And frankly, so far, been a disappointment to a lot of people out there.
Well, it's interesting because you bring up Drew Sanders and then having to stay home for Justin Fields. Would you spy him? I'd consider it. I
would consider it at the bare minimum. I would go in with that in my toolbox, right? I'm not saying I would start the game spying Justin Simmons. I'm saying I'd be prepared to do it. Look, you go in offensively, defensively. You don't use everything that's on the play sheet, right? You don't. You want to be uber prepared. So, I mean, what do you end up using ideally? 40%, 45%. So you have to make sure that you've got that. If you're Vance Joseph, that you have packages that involve a spy. The question then is, who do you want to be the spy? Is that the kind of thing that you're willing to entrust to Drew Sanders, making his second career start, and it's his second game in which he's playing extensively? Or is that an Alex Singleton role, right? Or even do you farm that out to one of your edges? Is that a Jonathan Cooper role, maybe, for example? I mean, if you're talking about a guy, if you're talking about putting that job in the hands of maybe your savviest player on defense, your savviest and smartest guy, you'd think about giving it to Coop, I think, in my opinion.
Right. I'll quote Jack Nicholson as the Joker. Who do you trust? Hubba, 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 money, money, money. Who do you trust? And on that Broncos defense, it might be a Singleton job. It might be a Cooper job. Those are guys that you trust. With the young kid, as much as we like him, no, we don't trust him yet.
Yeah, you got to earn that trust, right? I mean, I think the thing about this defense, if you're looking at the lineup on Sunday and you're seeing Drew Sanders and you're seeing De'Aaron Turner yell, I mean, what's the trust factor? You have to earn that. Now, you get better from doing, all right? Drew Sanders had a rough day last week. This doesn't mean he's going to have a rough career. Right. But the question is he ready for extensive work? Well, ready or not, he's going to get it. He's going to get it. That's the thing here, right? It doesn't matter if you're ready. You're about to get the work because that's it. I mean, they've basically decided he's ahead of Justin Strnad, which is fine. Look, Strnad's in the fourth year of his contract. He's basically a special teamer at this point. Drew Sanders could develop into an every down inside linebacker and somebody you even rotate out on the edge for a pass rush threat. So it's logical to put this role into the hands of Drew Sanders because you're counting on him growing. The question is he going to grow fast enough to where he's not a liability out there on the lakefront on Sunday?
Yeah, and the Bears are hungry for a win. They're 0-3 as well. And you and I talked to plenty of defenders this week in the locker room, and it was all about containing Fields. And to sound like Bill Belichick, Mace, which isn't a bad thing. And by the way, read his dad's book on scouting principles. It's one of my favorite football books. But either way, if Cole Kmet beats you, let Cole Kmet beat you. I dare you to have Cole Kmet beat you. Make sure DJ Moore doesn't go off. Make sure Justin Fields doesn't kill you as a runner. And the back to basics for me is just stuffing the run, being sound against the run. I don't care if it's Khalil Herbert. I don't care if it's Roshan Johnson. I don't care if it's Justin Fields. It's something I'm writing about in my game plan at denversports.com. Stop the run first. If they beat you with the pass, oh well. They haven't done that yet this year, but make sure you are solid against the run.
Haven't done that this year. Haven't done that in a long time. I mean, for all of Justin Fields' dynamism on the ground, and he has made some plays through the air, we are still waiting on the first 300-yard passing game of his career, are we not?
Right.
Yes. And here we are in year 3 in the most passing-centric era of football in the history of the sport. So, I mean, I'll say this, though. If you get beat and Fields has the first 300-yard game of his career, and we're talking about, oh, man, you give up 70 points for the first time since 1966, first time for any team, And then a week later, Justin Fields, who famously is struggling to find consistency and rhythm as a passer, goes off. I mean, what are we saying about the defense if
Well,
this happens
you
and
know
they're
what I'll
0
be
4,
saying,
man?
You know what I'll be
Oy,
saying,
oy,
and
oy.
then I know you'll be cussing me out on Monday because I'll be like, fire Vance Joseph. Like, if Justin Fields has his first 300-yard game and the Bears win, I don't want to say that.
I know.
don't want to say that,
Well,
but like that's what you're staring at.
I would say this, Cecil, if you do that, frame it in the I want Vance Joseph to be fired, not Vance Joseph is going to be fired. That is like the old desk editor in me because I've done like, right?
Yeah.
Years ago I worked on the desk at NFL.com and I would, had a habit of saying, well, do you really mean this?
Well, and the sad thing is, Mace, is I don't want him to be fired. I don't want him to be fired. I just think he should be. I just think he should be if you lose by 50 and then Justin Fields gets his first 300-yard game. Like, come on.
Yeah, I don't want this, and I think there is there's always the law of unintended consequences.
Mm-hmm.
An unintended consequence of canning a coach after not even one quarter of the season is how it's perceived in the coaching community, which, as we know, is a very tight-knit community, right?
Yes.
If you jettison a defensive play caller after 4 games, and we do know, and we've talked about how he did inherit a defense that declined in the back half of last season, especially in the last 5 games of the season. That's not going to go over well in those circles, right? And most of those coaches have multiple opportunities, multiple places they can go. So that's why I think that's something you have to think about if it comes to that. Now, the flip side of it, you see it often. You don't see it often in football, but you sometimes see in other sports, in particular if you follow. I know you don't follow soccer on a global basis, but people out there watching who follow soccer understand that there have been a lot of instances where teams have moved on from coaches pretty quickly, coaches/managers. Sometimes as soon as a few weeks into a season, and most of the seasons, depending on where you are in the world, are like, 8-9 months in length, right? Move on after a few weeks, even in the first year of a coach's tenure, because they know it's like, okay, this isn't going to get any better. Right. So that's why I think there will be pointed questions if the Broncos. It's not going to be 70 points. They will not give up 70 again. I've said a couple of things in the last couple of weeks I'm standing by. One, I said the Broncos, they may be 0-3, but they're not going to be 0-4. I'm standing by that. The Bears are not a very good team.
No.
And the other thing is, and this is probably the safest pick I'll ever make in my entire life, the Broncos will not give up 70 points this week. They will not give up that many points again.
Right.
And I got to make some stupid bet if they do that. Like, am I going to eat like an acorn or something like that?
Yeah, just as long as it's not a tattoo bet. Tattoo bets are played out.
No, I'm not doing tattoos anyway. I'm not getting near a needle unless I have to. I mean, sometimes you have to when you go to the doctor's office, right? You have to have needles, and sometimes you got to go in that tube, that MRI tube, right? I hate both. But I understand I got to do it, but I'm not doing it voluntarily. I'm doing it if the doctor says, "Hey, you've got these chronic headaches. We got to look at your brain," which happened a few years ago. I'm like, "Okay, fine." I hate every second in that tube, but I'm glad I did it because it turned out they just said, "No, you don't have a tumor. You have cluster headaches." Okay, fine, whatever.
Okay, yeah.
I mean, that's not. Yeah, I learned something by being in that tube, but I didn't want to go in the tube. But again, yeah. So that's why I'm not going to do a tattoo because I don't want any needles that I don't need. Right. Anyhow,
right.
That's my rant. Sorry about that.
How about the beautiful bean footage of Vance Joseph on tackling? I will roll it myself.
Yeah,
please do.
I think everyone's having that same issue as far as tackling, but a team like that will expose you with their speed because of the angles you're taking, right, or the leverage you're in. So it's almost worse when you're playing that much speed. But everyone's having that challenge. But as pros, as coaches, most guys are tackling every day. At least simulating tackling. Not going to the ground, but that's every day in practice. But again, the speed, the angles, it was obviously overwhelming for us.
Speed and angles, okay? And let's talk about the angles because that's where the conversation comes into Drew Sanders, for example. Another player who was particularly beset by missed tackles was Isang Bassi. And it's been interesting. I mean, Bassi has gone, he held his own in week 1, right? A little bit
had a
off
great
in week 2.
preseason.
Yes. And then, missed an interception. But then, I mean, he is sliding and flailing all over the place in week 3. So we'll see what the playing time looks like for Isang Bassi on Sunday.
Yeah, it might be a little different, shall we say. Yeah. And back to basics for me is stopping the run, Mace, but it's also running the ball to cure those second half woes. And Garrett Bowles talked about Chicago and every responsibility that this team has in week 4.
Bears are good. They got in the Gotway. He was with the Raiders in 2021. Good player. They have a lot of good, DeMarcus Walker, a guy that, came in my draft class. Since I'm the last one here, it's a little crazy to that. But, no, so it will be fun to see him, and then they got that big stud linebacker from Buffalo that they picked up. But, their defense is good. Their record's 0-4, but they play at a high level. They have a lot of great, people that just try hard, that want to, just rush the passer, and do a bunch of games and things like that. So, we're going to have that great discipline this week for sure.
Okay, so, yeah, you got some names there. Now, what's interesting, Chicago has all of 1 sack in 3 games. 1, and that's by Yannick Ngakoue. Ngakoue and DeMarcus Walker each have 3 quarterback hits. And DeMarcus Walker has become a pretty solid player, even though the sack numbers aren't yet there this year. He's still, as a pure interior rusher, he's actually one of the best in the NFL. Yeah. If you break down his pass rush efficiency stats in terms of generating hits, hurries, sacks over the last few years, even when he was in Denver, he was among the league leaders, right?
Yep.
Now, the flip side of DeMarcus is that you can run at him. And I think if you're the Broncos, you try to do that. But they have some guys who can cause some problems. But you should be – this is a group that you should defensively, the Bears defense, you should be able to control and keep in check, I think. Although they do have some intriguing players. They got Tremaine Edmonds out there. That's who Garrett Bowles was referring to there coming from Buffalo. So they have some talent. It's just the pieces haven't quite fit just yet. And that's where all the stuff with Alan Williams and now, he's on leave basically, and Eberflus is now calling the defense. There's a little bit of chaos there on that side of the ball for Chicago.
Yeah, they have a coach on leave. But did you notice Garrett Bowles went to the future?
Air quotes.
I did the air quotes. Did you notice Garrett Bowles went in the future? Because he's like, their record's 0-4. Well, it will be after Sunday. Am I right, fellas? Yeah.
Well, it's more than 0-3. I mean, with the Bears right now, I mean, shoot. Last year, this was a team that was 3-4 and lost 10 consecutive games to close the season. So they're on a 13-game losing streak. I think I may have referred to a 14-game losing streak at one point, which means I'm like Bowlesy. I'm getting ahead of myself too.
Right. Okay. Well, it's Chicago. It's what you do, right? You
get a
little ahead of yourself.
I mean,
you're having fun, man. Look at you. Got the atmosphere. Chicago. Have you had a pie yet? You've had a Chicago pie, I assume, right?
No, I had a salad. I had a salad and a Diet Mountain Dew here. I mean,
okay, all right. It's hard to resist that Chicago pie, baby. And that's for me. I can't eat pizza anymore. That's for me.
That might be dinner tonight. I don't know just yet, but I'm kind of on mountain time here, right? So I'm having a late lunch, and I flew out here to the Midwest. But yeah, by the way, the weather is fabulous. I remember when the schedule came out thinking, boy, what a break that you getting Chicago early rather than late. You get to November, December, it can be nasty. Last I checked, the forecast temperature for game time is 80 degrees in Chicago. Maybe a couple of degrees lower because you're right there on the shore of Lake Michigan, but it should be a perfect day for football. and a perfect day for the Broncos to get right. Like Green Day said, wake me up, wake me when September ends. Well, September ends on Saturday, so maybe you turn the page. I think Mike Kliss had some stat about Sean Payton in October. It's kind of what you're leaning on right now, right?
Okay.
Getting it right in October.
I didn't think Mike Kliss would have any sort of Green Day quotes, but
no, he wouldn't. Leave that to me. Leave that to me.
Yeah. Maybe Troy. Troy might. Troy's a little more metal, a little more hair metal, but
he's more metal. I'm more like I'm more like
Hey, pop punk wasn't bad.
90s, yeah. Hey, do you have the time to listen to me whine about nothing and everything all at once? Because I am one of those melodramatic fools, neurotic to the bone about it, or is it neurotic to the core? I don't know.
Neurotic to the core, I think.
Core. Thank you. I meant yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Sometimes I give myself the creeps.
Yeah, look at you singing.
Sometimes my mind plays tricks on me as well. It does that a lot.
Yes,
it's one of the things I'm putting in the work on, as they say. Right.
Yes. So that's always good. You got to do that. He's Andrew Mason. You follow him on all socials at Mace Denver. Have fun in Chicago, brother.
I will. All
right.
You have fun back in Colorado.
I will do that. Had a bear in my backyard this week. Is that a good sign or a bad sign?
Okay. Did the bear cause any damage?
No. Just roll around in the pine cones.
Okay. All right. You're worried if there's any destruction there, but the bear.
I didn't see Mama. It was the kid bear, so I didn't see Mama. Kid bear's fine. Mama bear scares me.
Okay, so it was the bear, the kid bear, the cub.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's been a bad week for the Cubs. They went down to Atlanta and got swept when they needed those games in the playoff race. I mean, Atlanta's basically clinched everything, and in fact, they clinched the division. They, were at the brink of clinching home field for the playoffs. They threw two, quasi minor league starters out there for the games, and they still beat the Cubs. And I say this to all, I got some Cub fans out there and some that are friends of mine. I'm sorry.
Sorry. Things will get better eventually.
Yes.
And we'll be recapping for you right here, denversports.com. He's Andrew Mason. I'm Cecil Lammey saying thanks for watching, everyone. Stay tuned, and would you please